Well, welcome everybody to the Fantasy Football War Room podcast. I'm your host James, and with me I have Nick.
How's it going, everybody?
Frank.
Hey now.
Chris.
Pronto.
And Sam.
You guys line up alphabetically by height.
That's got to be a coach. Belichick.
No, but it is a coach. Bill Peterson, the coach of the Houston Oilers.
Explains it.
Back in the day. Yeah, exactly.
It's a good way to start them. Alphabetical, get over there, see what happens.
I guess you can
Alphabetically
write out
by
their
height.
heights instead of numbers. Okay.
We'll see how smart they are right off the bat. That's a good
Alphabetically by height. Oh, Dave.
Gentlemen, how you guys doing?
Not bad.
Good. It's been a while.
Yeah.
No kidding. Missed you guys.
We got a fun little episode coming today, going over some draft strategies and managers in your league. We're going to mix it up a little bit, and won't be talking about some players just to kind of give us a little bit of a break as well. So I'm looking forward to that. You guys have a good week so far? Everything going okay?
No complaints.
far, so
Can't
good.
complain.
I miss Frank's purple shirt from last episode. I thought that was a little better. You're a little bit more regular colored today, so...
Don't disrespect the Macho Man. Come on. Yeah, I can wear any color. Purple, pink, orange, whatever you want.
All right, well, let's get into it and let's see where these discussions take us. We're gonna open this up more of an open forum between the five of us, just have some fun with it. So we don't know where it's gonna go, and hopefully it'll be a good one. Before draft strategies, let's go into some of the different types of leagues you can go into. So the most common leagues, you have your redraft, you have your keeper, and you have your dynasty. There are some other ones out there, obviously, which a lot of people are starting to get into, but these are the most common that we find everyone's going about. So let's start with the redraft. Sam, why don't you give us a take on what a redraft is and how you would tackle drafting in a redraft?
Yeah, so a redraft league is basically when you go and you select a new team every year, essentially. You're going with a clean slate after the season is over, and you're basically starting from scratch. And these are pretty interesting. They're pretty cool leagues, but they're very short term. You got to look at who's in their prime. You got to look at players that are going to produce that year. You're going to make sure that you have a well balanced team, because otherwise, you're not looking for future. You're not looking to say, I need to get this guy. He's a rookie. I know he's going to be okay this year, but he's going to be great down the road. It's not about that. You're looking for guys that are probably in the league 4 or 5 years max, maybe 3 at most, and those are the guys that are going to bring you those points every single week. You want to be balanced across the board. You want to try, but you definitely need to start building around a core group of guys. Generally, you're going to do RBs. RBs are definitely going to go high in redraft leagues because they're the ones that are going to be producing the points week in, week out. You need to have a solid quarterback as well to make sure that you have one of the top tier elite quarterbacks if you can. And wide receivers. Wide receivers are going to be tricky because they're so deep. You have to know who these guys are. I like to look at guys that are, maybe moving to a new team and, jumping into a new spot within the roster. Like, guys that are playing with strong wide receiver ones that are going to be open and that are in the league 2-3 years, that are going to have the opportunity to come out from under that shadow. So I think they're really fun. They can be fun. They could be frustrating too, because you could get some guys that you think are going to be doing really, really well based on some intel, and then they just basically don't perform. But the good part about that is there's always next year. So you're not stuck with these guys. You're not, burdened with carrying these guys forward on your team. I'm in actually not a redraft, but I'm in a keeper league, but we actually keep only 2 players. So it's almost like a redraft, but we keep 2 players and away we go. So for me in that league, I have Lamar Jackson, so I kept him. And then I also kept my running back, which was Emmitt Smith. And We all know how that worked out for me, so that didn't actually work out well because Emmett didn't have a great year. But
Wait. Emmett Smith. What are you talking about?
Oh
He's
my
been
God,
retired
Emmett
for
Smith.
so many years.
Ezekiel Elliott. I'm
Of course
so
he
sorry.
didn't have a good year.
He's sitting at home. Obviously, he didn't have a good year. I had Zeke, Emmett Smith. That's hilarious.
No.
That's showing my age too. It's but anyway,
No, the
yeah,
gray
so-
hair in your beard shows your age.
a little bit. It's
So you-
distinguished.
You
Anyway.
jumped the gun on us. We're not talking about keepers next, but thank you.
Right.
That was good.
But this was a bit of a hybrid, right? Because you're not
yes.
keeping, but anyway. So
But yes, but okay.
he was
So-
on my team.
Let's stick with the redraft format.
yeah.
If you have first pick overall, who are you taking? What position wise? Not player. I just want to know what position are you taking if you have the first pick overall in a redraft.
So that's a tricky thing because I think position has a lot to do with it. If I'm 1-1, I'm probably going to go with a QB like Patty Mahomes or somebody like that. That's going to be able to put up those points. But if I'm mid kind of range, I'm definitely going RB. I'm definitely going to go one of those top 10 RBs that is going to be that workhorse for me. That's going to give me those points week in, week out.
Okay, Chris, same question to you.
Redraft, I'm probably going to go running back, depend on the roster breakdown, of course. It's just going to be one of those positions that I'm going to want to secure early. If it's a 2 QB league, I still think I can grab 2 decent QBs later. With the redraft, my strategy is trying to grab as many studs as I can because trading is not really one of those things that happens too often in redraft leagues. So I'm trying to grab as much top end talent as I can and work my way through the waiver wire and go from there in redrafts, really.
Yeah, so I like how you put that in. Sorry, I didn't specify first. So if it was a 2 quarterback league, I probably would lean the way Sam was and maybe think quarterback just because you need 2 of them. But in a 1 quarterback, I think I would lean running back just because those are usually where you're going with it. Anybody, would you take a wide receiver in the first round over the running back or the quarterback?
First round, later, maybe
Like late
later in the
first,
first round, but not with one of the top 5 picks.
Okay.
Even later in the first round, I don't know. I still would probably go RB, to be honest, because
maybe
I mean,
if it's a
you're looking
PPR.
10, 12 teams, right? So, I don't know.
But depending on if you're gonna get a Devontae Adams or like a Tyreek Hill,
Yeah,
and those top,
true.
that can equal out. If you're not getting a top 5 running back, then I'd want one of those top 5 wide receivers that are gonna equal out those points.
That's
for
true.
me.
That's true. I guess it depends, right? Yeah.
And now, is anybody going 0 RB in a redraft?
No, I don't think you can. I don't think you can.
Nope. Yeah, I mean, I've never gone 0 RB. I don't think in any of my leagues that I've ever played in, and I've done a lot of different ones, different strategies. Never. I'm an
love your
RB guy.
RBs,
I
buddy.
love my RBs, as the guys know. I mean,
RB
those are
hoarder.
the guys. I hit RB heavy. If there's 4 positions to play in RB, I would love to take 4 starting RBs to have in that and go from there. But yeah, that's how I'd go about it. But yeah, for redraft, I mean, you're looking, like Chris said, get the best players possible because you're probably not going to be able to trade later. Unfortunately, you can't figure out injuries. You can't figure out all that stuff. You don't have a crystal ball. So a lot of your league in that season is going to be on the draft, a heavy portion of it. And based on what happens throughout the season will kind of dictate how your season goes. I know we just finished one last year where we had a redraft, and I mean, Nick had about 3 guys injured to start the season for a couple of weeks there, and he managed to sneak into the playoffs, but he just didn't have enough firepower by the end of it. So, and then I had guys, I made a trade. I traded Montgomery for Christian McCaffrey, hoping that McCaffrey would come back for me in the finals because my team, I had enough running backs to do that. Luckily, I got lucky and was able to still hold out and win that one, but McCaffrey didn't come back, so it was a big risk that I took. So,
And
It all
Montgomery
depends.
did well towards the end of the season.
he did.
too,
He got
so-
that guy into the playoffs. He ended up losing before facing me in the finals, so I was happy about that too. But yeah, so well, that's our take on the redraft league. Another style league which Sam did mention is the keeper league. Nick, why don't you talk to us about keeper leagues? What is it, and how would you draft in a keeper league? Any different from the redraft?
Yeah, so basically a keeper league is a league where at the end of the year, each team, depending on, I mean, the league settings, is going to keep a certain amount of players. Sometimes it can be, like Sam said, two. Normally, your generic one is about four. And sometimes, even if the leagues want, they can do specific position wise or, specific rules on you can only have two running backs, only two wide. So, something like that. It's basically just every year you're going to keep a certain amount of players that are almost locked on your team no matter what happens the next year. As for drafting wise, it really all comes down to those keepers. So, what I like to do for my keepers, at least, I like to keep them somewhat balanced. Two running backs, two wide receivers, as long as I have that amount of depth. Like in our league, for one of our keepers there, we're only allowed to keep two running backs max, just so that, it's still somewhat fair throughout the whole league. So either way, I can only keep two running backs. If I can keep more running backs and I have more stud running backs on my team, sure, I want to keep all my running backs because I like James. I like the running backs, and I feel like running backs are more volatile in the NFL. So I want those starting running backs on my team as much as I can have. Where the wide receivers are more of a depth type of position. Other than that, after you have your set keepers in your draft, I mean, at least the first few rounds, you're going to go best available to fill out those slots you have, getting more running backs, getting more wide receivers. If you're in a 2 quarterback league, sometimes a keeper would definitely be a quarterback because, you're going to need two no matter what. So you're going to want to keep a good quarterback to have on your team sometimes. But that does still have a gap where, I'm only going to really keep these top tight quarterbacks because after that there is a tier drop, and technically I don't need to keep a quarterback at that point and I can draft them. So those are different things that you have to look at there. But other than that, yeah, I'm going basically best available at those positions, what I can find. In a keeper league, because there are draft picks that you can trade during the season, there's definitely a chance for me to draft a little bit of younger players, or if I don't hit on a lot of guys but I use my waiver wire properly, I can hit on making trades and building my team into something. It really depends how you start off on the season, how you're doing during the year. As the year goes along, that's going to make you want to do different things with those draft picks. We'll get into different managerial different managerial types with those draft picks and how people would use them and differently in the scenarios. But basically, that's your main keeper type of status where you want to draft that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I you hit everything there. The key there is the draft picks, like you said. Being able to move those, I find in a keeper league, it's a little easier to trade for players at that point because you can use the draft capital to make those trades, and it gives you that sense like you're a regular NFL GM kind of with draft picks for the upcoming year. And the only downfall with a keeper league is you need commitment, and if people aren't committed fully and the next season they walk away because they don't want to be there, you have to find people to pick up these teams, or else a keeper league won't work.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
Yeah, I think, and I'll ask you guys, are you drafting similarly as a redraft? I mean, are you guys going running back first, or are you going, I mean, it all depends on how it is. Let's say it's a 1 QB league. Are you still going running back in the first few picks like you would? Is that the same consensus across the board?
Yeah, I'd still go running
pretty
back
much.
there.
Pretty much. Like, I mean, I guess it would depend on what you're keeping. Like, to Nick's point, if you could only keep two RBs, right, you're definitely going to go RB probably. But if you could keep 2, 3, or 4 RBs, or whatever the case may be, you might change your strategy a little bit. But running backs generally are the workhorse for pretty much any fantasy program you're running, right? Like, so yeah, it's got to be running back, I think, especially for to balance out the team for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, there's only one starting running back mostly on every team, right? So you want that main guy, and unfortunately, if you're 12 teams in a keeper league, if all these teams have 2 running backs, you're at slim pickings in those next rounds of who's left as a main type running back. So definitely those are the guys you want to take right away to secure that you have multiple running backs in case of injuries, in case of anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen some cool formations of how you do keeper leagues. Like I've seen ones where you have to keep a rookie, and every year you have no choice, and that's someone that you have to keep. So you're changing your other players, but you have to keep a rookie from the season before. I've seen ones where, based off of the draft position of that player, their ADP are the picks that you lose for next year. Yeah. So if you drafted Zeke in the first round, next year you don't get that first round pick because you kept Zeke. Or I've seen them where they decrease a pick. So it gets very complicated at that point. So you took Zeke in the first round. Next year he becomes a second round pick. So you no longer can trade or use that second round pick because he's the player you're taking from there. So it gets very complicated. Then you can add in salaries. I've seen a bunch of that too. So there's different formats of it out there. But definitely the biggest thing is, like I said, you're looking at it, get your best players available. You may want to look at it where maybe draft your 4 keepers, the 4 guys you think right now in the draft I will keep for a couple of years because I know they're going to be good. So that could be the first 4 you draft. Maybe you don't go based off position, right? That changes how you want to do things. Maybe you want to go young guys. I wouldn't recommend going rookies right off the bat just because you don't know how they're going to be, but maybe a second or third year player that's been pretty good, probably your best bet of where you're looking at some of them, especially for the first 2 rounds. But don't stray away from the older guys either, because in a that style of there, if you're only keeping 4 guys, having a guy who's maybe 29, 30 isn't a bad thing because he could still have a really good year for you, and then you could choose to either keep him or trade him or do what you want with him afterwards. So, but yeah, that's all I have there. Do you guys have anything else on the keeper league you want to add, or? No,
it's way too. Some of those things are way too complicated for me. I still think Emmitt Smith is playing. So I mean,
that's true. No, we don't know what
imagine?
you're thinking. That's,
Can you imagine?
Oh man.
Anyway. But yeah,
hey, but I bet you'll get him number 1 overall, no matter what.
Probably.
Yeah.
Keep it quiet.
Well, let's go into our next style of league, and this one's been popping up a lot lately. A lot of people seem to be jumping on this bandwagon. The Dynasty League. Chris, why don't you tell us about Dynasty?
Dynasty League is a league where you're going to draft your whole team. Pretty much, you're going to set yourself up for some years to come because you're going to keep those guys. You're not going to be letting any of those guys go unless you're dropping them into free agency or trading them. So there's a bunch of different styles of Dynasty. There's the Devi Dynasty, where you're going to have pretty much a farm system of college players that you will draft in a separate draft that will eventually make their way to your team. There's a Campus to Canton League, which we were all just recently part of, is where you have your Canton team, which is your NFL roster, and your campus team, which is your NCAA roster. And eventually those NCAA roster guys will make it up to your NFL team, but your NCAA roster is also a competitive roster. One of the first things for me before I enter a Dynasty startup draft is to create a draft plan. This draft plan is fluid and it does change based on draft position, what the board gives you, tier drop, and all that stuff. So one of the first things I do when I enter a league into a draft is look at the draft scoring, because that's going to tell me what is pretty much the most important positions in the league. You can get caught on the outside looking in if you don't look at the draft scoring. One of the biggest things I found in the past year or so is the tight end premium, which brings the tight end position up, makes it a little bit more competitive. So if you don't get one of these elite tight ends can put up wide receiver 1 numbers with the premium. So if you get caught on the outside looking in and you're going to draft a bum tight end, that could be your make or break for winning your weeks. So first thing I do is I'll look at scoring. Next thing I'll do is I'll look at roster breakdown. Pretty much, to me, the best Dynasty format for roster breakdown is Superflex. So pretty much rolling two QBs, and then once you figure out your draft spot.
Hold on, Chris, just to interrupt there for our listeners that don't know what a Superflex is. What positions go under the Superflex?
So your Superflex is pretty much every position: quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end. But mainly you're going to want to start a quarterback in the Superflex spot because they're almost guaranteed 15 points. They're almost guaranteed a 15-point floor, pretty much almost week in and week out. So you're almost guaranteed those points, right?
Unless you're a Jets quarterback.
Or Kendall
Yeah,
Hinton.
exactly. But so from there, once you figure out your draft spot, my favorite draft spots are mid 5, 6 or back end 12, and then you get the turn. Once you figure out your draft spots, that's where you're really gonna set up your draft plan for those dynasty drafts. One of the last one we were in, I drafted really young. I tried to set myself up for years of domination while these other guys here are all going to be retired and rebuilding, and I'm just going to sweep for years. My name's going to be on the trophy for a while. So I've drafted different strategies in a bunch of different leagues. I kind of went the 0 RB route here, and I ended up with Javonte Williams and Kenny Gainwell late in the draft. So I'm kind of happy with that. My RB struggle, but if they hit, I'm good. I got stud wide receivers. Just like the other guys here, I'm a big running back guy, but recently I've kind of changed my tone on that. I find it easier to replace a starting running back with their handcuff over a stud wide receiver. I find the wide receivers that come in to replace a stud wide receiver aren't always going to produce like their replacements. So I'd rather grab those top 10 wide receivers early over a top 3 or top 5 running back, because like you've seen this year with Mike Davis, who turned out to be a stud, that's someone that you'd be able to grab on the waiver wire. Tony Pollard showed up big when Zeke was out. Gio Bernard had some games. So these are all guys that you'd be able to grab on that 0 running back strategy. Is it a strategy that'll set you up for success in Dynasty? You kind of have to get a little lucky, and you have to work real hard on the waiver line, because some of these dynasties are bigger rosters, so the waiver wire is a little bit eaten up at the position. So you kind of have to really pay attention to what you're doing on the waiver. You have to work hard if you're going to go 0 RB. And one of the biggest things that I find when I draft RBs in Dynasty is to draft their handcuffs. That's a big part of it, because in these deeper leagues, you're most likely not going to find the high-end handcuffs on the waiver wire. So just a couple things to look out for when you jump into these leagues. Check the scoring, check the roster, figure out your draft spot, and build out from there.
Yeah, no, you hit every point there. An example of the check your scoring. We were talking about this. It was you and your brother. Your brother was drafting in a league, Chris, and he couldn't figure out why people were taking defensive players so early. And it was because he didn't look at the scoring and found out that the defensive players were scoring 3 times as much as all the other players. And that's why they were all taking them first.
It was actually, we figured it out. So we started drafting, we drafted Devin White and Zach Cunningham in like the 3rd and 4th, because I told him no one else in the league was looking at the scoring, and the IDP scoring stacked. So these linebackers that got all these tackles, a tackle was worth like 3 points. So yeah, so Zach Cunningham finished in the top 10 of all fantasy scorers throughout the year. So it's really important to really dive into the scoring. Some leagues have bonus points, whether it's a 1 point, half point PPR, tight end bonuses. A lot of the leagues that I run, the QB touchdown is 6 points for passing. So that ups the QB value a bit as well. So if you're diving in, because it's a dynasty league and you're in it for the long haul, you really got to pay attention to what you're doing pre-draft and all the settings to set yourself up for lots of trophies.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
that's true.
Yeah,
Well,
hopefully.
that's pretty much every league style. We gave you a little idea of how to draft there, what you should be looking for, what you should be doing. But let's get into the next part of this, which is the people you're playing against. And that's just as much part of this as is the how to play and what the league is. Because if you don't know how to match up against these people or play against them or how they are, you don't know, you might not win your leagues because you'll be taken back by what they can do or not do. So let's go into our player styles, I would say. So with that, our first player style, we have what I like to call no man is safe. And this is a player that will trade anybody. Doesn't matter who's on his team, doesn't matter where he drafted him, doesn't matter how good or bad he is. He will trade him for the right price, sometimes the wrong price, doesn't matter what it is. He'll also trade away the future, all of his draft picks. His goal is to make his team as good as it is, that he thinks in his mind he can win every season. Doesn't matter about next year, doesn't matter. He just wants to get into a playoff spot and try to win this year. And in our leagues, all of them across the board, our resident person of this is Chris.
100%.
How's that working out for you, Chris?
I'm pretty good. I'm on the podium. I've got a lot of championships. I mean, if it wasn't for Derek Carr's bum groin, I would have beat James and had another chip. I think the week after, my team balled out, which is kind of disappointing. But
I don't think I've seen you draft in the first 5 rounds in like 4 years.
Unless it's a startup, that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't seen you draft in those rounds at all. Like you're non-existent in those rounds.
I mean, Herm Edwards said it the best: "You play to win the game."
That's
Right?
true.
At the end of the day, I don't
it.
play to draft. So if I can move some draft picks that other guys overvalue a little bit to put me in a position to win, then I'll take that. Like, for instance, the keeper league we're in there, I was last and I was pretty much out. I became a seller, and then the week after I became a buyer. I traded for Tyreek Hill and Jonathan Taylor. I looked at my position in the standings and figured, what good is 2 draft picks next year if I can move them this year and compete? And then I ended up in the finals and lost to Sammy Boy over there. But he also made trades as well to pick up James Robinson. So, I mean, if I'm moving draft capital and it costs me a little bit in the future, but I can win now. I mean, I play fantasy football to win. At the end of the day, I play to win. I don't play to draft. I'd rather trade assets. I mean, I've traded pretty much every superstar under the sun. I've traded Greco, Saquon. I've traded CMC. I've traded Tyreek Hill twice, 3 times. I've traded Lamar Jackson.
I think you and I have traded Hill to each other and back 3 times in one league.
So,
pretty sure. So
and you don't win at the draft either, right? Especially in redrafts, you're not going to win at the draft. You got to make moves in the season. Like my team never looks the same as when I drafted it. No matter keeper, redraft, dynasty, a lot of turnover. I tried to follow the trends. Tried to pick up on situation. I'm watching coaching changes. There's a lot of different variables that go into my game style, but you pretty much you got it on the nose. No man is safe. Sometimes when I message you guys, you're like, "Oh, it's untouchable, this and that." I got no untouchables on my team. As Frank will like this one, as the great Ted DiBiase said, everybody's got a price.
You got it. Virgil, get my briefcase.
And with that, I will now segue into our next type of manager, which is the trade guru. And this is the type of person that hounds people relentlessly to make a trade.
Oh, boy.
He basically will come to you with a trade offer and then convince you that the trade actually works well for you more than him, even though in the back of his mind, he thinks it's working well for him instead. He usually wins most of his deals, and pops a lot of people's eyes because they look at it and are like, wow, I can't believe you just got that, or why didn't anyone else get in there, or how come that's what the price was? I could have sworn I would have offered more. So it's one of those guys, and I will admit to it, the resident guy in our league is me. I do this and I trade with everybody. I was actually put to a test this year where 2 of the people in our podcast, Mr. Sam and Mr. Chris, went out to the league and told everybody not to trade with me.
No trade policy.
And I went out and I traded with almost every single general manager in our league. I've got trades, I got draft picks, I moved superstars, I did it all. And every time I'd make a trade, they would send another message saying, guys, stop trading with James. And I continuously did it. Actually, my favorite is the fact that I traded Myles Gaskin not once, but twice in the same season, a few weeks apart. And not only did I trade him, I actually got better capital the second time than the first time. And I picked him up on waivers both times.
That was move of the year.
So
I'll tell you, man, I was one of the guys that started the no trade with James kind of thing, right? And I traded with him twice. I can't believe it.
So did Chris. Chris traded with me too.
Well, hey man, but listen, like you said, Chris, everybody's got its price. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It just depends on where you are in that trade, right? Because I mean, a couple of my trades, I won the league, but I think I got good value for the first trade. Second trade, maybe not so much good value, but I needed to get back into a better draft position, right? So it's really about kind of like that second trade was I can replace my guy and look to next year, right? But James is willing to do it. I think, it's really one of those things where it's like so especially was it the second trade, James? It was like 2 a.m. This guy would not let me go to sleep. He kept on messaging me. I'm like, oh my God. So I just said fine at the end. It was one of those
That's
things.
part
right?
of my strategy. I caught you when you were
Wore
least
me down.
expecting it, and you
Wore
were
me
already
down.
tired, and you just wanted to get me off the phone. So
Yeah,
you gave me what I
exactly,
wanted, and that was
exactly,
it. So
exactly.
And let's not
Resistance
forget,
beats resistance.
Jesus.
those trades are often
Yeah.
so one-sided that people have often, accused collusion. So
Oh, I get
heard
that
that
all
many
the
times.
time.
We've
Many
heard that
times,
many
That's
many
That's how one-sided
times.
it is.
But it's all like trade value is subjective at the end of the day,
Totally.
right? You may see one guy rated here, I see him there, so
Sure.
it's hard to call collusion. But James is definitely he's a good trading partner because he'll give you good value or he'll meet you in the middle. A lot of guys they just want to win the trade outright. I don't know if this is in the right spot, but Nick is just right here on my screen.
That's not true.
But yeah, I've seen some of the moves you pulled off. Some of them have been masterful, like the Myles Gaskin traded twice. As soon
was
as you
crazy.
traded him, I picked up on it, and I know I messaged you right away and gave you a pat on the back for that one. That was good.
It's all
Right
about
time, right
timing.
place, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
It's
I was
all
gonna say
about
the same
timing.
thing.
It's all about knowing who needs what.
Yeah.
That person there unfortunately needed running backs all season long, and I was able to. Actually, I think I traded him more than one running
You
back
did.
for a few draft picks. It wasn't just that
did.
one, but yes, my favorite.
So
is,
James, how many draft picks do you have in the first round next year?
I believe it's 4 firsts, 4 seconds, 2 thirds, and a fourth. I sold out this season. I took a different strategy. Chris's is always to win, and I know that strategy. Always try to win, always that. But in my keeper league, sometimes if I know that I'm not going to win, I will, I guess you could say, play the long game and maybe sell out the season a little bit to try and work for next year. And that's a
I did that
strategy.
too. Yep.
Yeah, it's a strategy I've taken a few times. It's gotten me to championships. I've won a few. I've lost. So I don't mind doing it. I know some people will say that, well, you're wasting your money because we do play some of these leagues for money. You're wasting your money for that year. It's not big money, but I mean, you're basically donating to someone else's title for that. But I'm like, so do NFL teams. Look at teams
right.
that tank on purpose, and they pay a heck of a lot more money than I do to get good players later. So
I did that 3 years ago in our league, right? In our league, I did that 3 years with Juju. I traded Juju. I traded Antonio Brown. I traded my starting running back at the time, and I was in last place. I couldn't do anything, right? I had good pieces, but they just weren't working on my team, and I ended up getting 4 first round picks as well the next season, and it worked out really well. I picked up Lamar. I picked up a lot of my cornerstone guys that I had, and in fact, I won back-to-back seasons. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have won. There would be no
You'd
way
still
I'd
be
be
in
in a
last.
position. 100%. There would be no way I'd be in a position to get the players that I got because of the fact that I was just hanging on to people that did no good on my team, right? So.
Well, so that explained 2 of our 5 characters. This next sort of explanation is what the rest I would put in for Frank, Sam, and Nick. It's the balanced player. These are guys that they will make a deal if it helps them. They will pick up players. They're very active. They're always trying to win, always trying to make it in the season, but they're not going to do something that's going to drastically hurt them. And most of their trades, like Chris also mentioned, they're looking to win their trades. They're not going to basically give you something that they think is a high risk.
Anyone who's making a trade is going to try and win. So don't even give me that.
I know that, but like Chris and I will take a risk.
Correct.
We will give up a
I'll
little bit more to go for the long run. You guys, it's more of a you won the trade. That's the only way you kind of will make some of these deals. The on-off one, you might go that route, but I mean, for the most part, that's what you're doing. But you guys are well-balanced, whole players as you go, and that's the majority, I think, of people in these leagues are guys that are like that, and that's what you're going to run into, I think, a lot. And these are the guys that are. It may take a little bit to make a trade with them. It may take a little bit to do stuff with, but they're pretty easygoing, and they, you can get things done. And I like those as well. And I still think I'm still on good relationship in terms with most of those guys in iLeague. So, but do you guys have you guys want to speak on behalf of the balanced player?
Well, listen, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like we try. I mean, I can't speak for the other two guys. I'll let them speak for themselves. But for me, I think if you walk away from a trade kind of thinking you got screwed over somehow, you probably did okay, because the other person is probably thinking the same thing, right? Like, it's really one of those things where you need to try to put value in there. I try to kind of make it a trade that makes sense given where I am, and I think if you ask 15 people, you're going to get 15 different answers on whether you won or lost a trade, right? Like, so it's really about time and place, right? So when you're in that particular spot, you need to make a decision that's not going to, for me anyways, hurt my team long term, but it's going to help me get closer to where I need to be, right? And I think that all of the trades that I try to do are like that. Like, I don't mind giving up a centerpiece guy if it makes sense for me, right? Like, I mean, like Aaron Jones as an example. Like, I gave up Aaron Jones. Some people are like, you're crazy, you gave up Aaron Jones. But I had the depth in that position that, and I had the ability to look at it a little more long-term and say, I think I'm good even without Aaron Jones for the next couple of years, but his capital is there today, and that's when I'm going to do the trade. So I try to be balanced on both sides, but I don't go into every trade saying, I got to win. I try to make it a win-win if it's possible, but it's got to make sense on my team, and the value I put on that player is very different than the value you put on your player on your team. So that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I agree, and I know Chris wants to say I'm trying to win every trade right now, but at
You
the
are.
same
We know
time,
you are. Don't mean.
That's fair. I'm gonna try and win a trade, no doubt. Anyone who is trying to make a trade is gonna try and make a trade. But
Try to improve your team, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's what it's about.
The point is,
Donovan Peoples-Jones, Warren Jackson. I mean, I think you guys were winning that trade.
not the way you
We'll
talked
talk
about
later.
Warren Jackson last
not
week. Like, what are you
anymore.
saying? You say Warren Jackson's going to be a stud in this top 10
That's
potential, and
That's
now,
right.
we got to give you Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's been in the league for how long and hasn't done that yet.
That's right,
I don't
yeah.
know, man. Anyways, what I'm saying is, if I'm going to make a trade, I'm not going to make a trade that can worsen my team and not help me get to where I want to be. If I'm going to go for a win, I'm going to want to make my team better. I'm going to want to help my team. So in that sense, yeah, I'm trying to win a trade, but I'm trying to do it for what's right for my team. If I see this trade as a lateral trade, if I see this trade as me giving away a major piece that I don't think even with what I'm getting back, I can make my team better, what's the point in making that trade is where I go at it with trades, right?
Makes sense.
If I'm going to give away like a CMC, for example, who, yeah, he's a top 10 running back. Well, I'm obviously going to want something that at least somewhat can make my team still fill that void that I'm losing. And you know what? But like, why would I give CMC away if I'm not going to fill that void? I'm just worsening my own self. So in that sense, yeah, I'm always going to try and win a trade, but it's not to the point where I'm trying to win a trade and screw over the other guy and say, you're not going to get fair value. Because I've given you back fair value, Chris, and you can't lie. So don't even try that stuff. But anyways, that's where I am with those trades where I'm always going to look to, help my team, but I'm not going to make a trade like you two, James and Chris, where it may push your team back a little bit, but it doesn't matter because you know that you can fix it later on, right? That's where I'm more of a conservative type of manager, where I don't want to take that risk in doing that to my team, in a sense.
Yeah.
I like to put the best possible team, every week. So if there's an injury or something like that, I might overpay a little bit in a trade. So just to put the best team on the field, you don't want to sacrifice everything, obviously, but sometimes
I
it's
had
worth
to do
overpaying
that.
a little bit. Yeah.
I did that with you, and I traded for frickin' Watson.
Yeah.
Because I lost Dak to a season-ending injury, and I was desperate for a quarterback, so I had to come throw in. Everyone wanted the whole ship from my team, but I had to give a little bit to get a bit. So,
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you're right. Both of you guys are right, but I also think that there's got to be a point in time when you got to look at your team and say, am I really going to do anything with this team, right? Like, I think that's what James was at this year with his team, and I was in that position 3 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever it was, where you need to say, okay, it's time to rebuild from the ground up, and like everybody's for sale. I'm going to kind of just throw in the towel in order to make you more competitive long term, right? And I think that sometimes if you are, and I guess we're going to talk about this in a little bit, if you are too conservative, it's going to hurt you that way too, right? So I think balance is basically where you want to be. I think, you look at Chris, he's a gambler, obviously. James is a wheeler dealer, and we're kind of like in the middle, right? Like we'll wheel and deal, but it's not just kind of throwing caution to the wind, right? So.
Yeah, I think Nick hit my style right on there, where I know if I want to take that risk, and I think Chris is the same, it's okay for me to take the risk because I know I can make up for it. And an example of that is another league where I traded away a bunch of picks to get my team better so that I can compete.
Yep.
And I'm looking at my draft capital and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, this is awful. And what did I do? I went out and traded a bunch of stuff to restock my draft capital. So then at the end of the year, the guys are looking at me like, I thought you traded all that away. Not realizing that at the same time, I was slowly rebuilding it with what I had left.
Oh.
Right. So, but yes, like you said, the last sort of person on my list here is the conservative / non-active player. And these are the guys that basically they sit back and after the draft and they either think that their team is a winner, more on the conservative side. They don't really do much, and they will fill their waiver their teams out. They will follow it, but they just won't trade anything. They won't give you the time of day. They value their players higher than everybody else. Not going to even look at your guys. Won't look at your offers. Just completely decline everything. They'll pick up their own guys and go from there. And then part of that is also the non-active guy that basically drafts his guys and then walks away from the league and you have no idea where he is for weeks and you're messaging him like crazy trying to say, hey, are you going to fill out your waiver this week or your guys this week so you can, start your lineup, or do I have to continue doing it as the commissioner? I kind of got them in the same category because they're not doing much aside from, drafting is when you see them and then you don't see them again. I know we have one of those in a few of our leagues. There's always, I think, one usually. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard because they got some guys you want, or they got, you want to help them. There's some of them I sit there and I message these guys. It's like, I want to help you. Mm-hmm. You're not going to win being that type of player. You will not win a single league. I'm sorry. As Chris has said, you do not win the league at the draft. And I go by the saying where a football league is 3 parts: the draft, waiver wire, and free agency, and luck. And those are 3 key pieces. If those 3 pieces fall into place, you will be a champion. But you cannot have one without the other. And that's the way I kind of see it, and that role there. Sorry, guys, I kind of took over that one. Do you guys have any examples of seeing that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a few of them in the leagues that we're in, or have had to replace owners. It's tough to play with those kind of guys. I don't necessarily like having the non-active owners in my league. Not necessarily just trading, but just regular banter and league activity and stuff like that. Just if someone sends you a trade request and you don't necessarily like it, just quickly decline it. Maybe give a reason why you don't like it. Maybe you guys work something out. Maybe you don't. But If you're joining a league, especially a dynasty league, where activity is one of the main drivers in the league, that's not the league for you. Redrafts, maybe you could be a little more non-active, just set it and forget it kind of thing. But I'm not a big fan of the non-active owners.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think non-active owners obviously shouldn't be in the league, right? Like, I mean, I think there's a difference between conservative and non-active. The conservative people are the guys that are really, they're putting their players out there. I mean, my message to them is, who hurt you so bad that you think you're going to get screwed every time you do a trade? Like, it's like, what happened to you,
James.
Pretty much. But it's really one of those things where I think it's more out of fear, one, and lack of knowledge too, right? Like, I think that they kind of look at this and they overvalue certain pieces and undervalue other pieces, right? And I think that that's part of the problem. And but I wouldn't put them in the same category. I know you said conservative and not active in the same. I think they're different. I think they're very different. They're the non-active are negligent, and that kind of hurts everybody, right? Like, so you don't want an easy win. You don't want to put people in a position where you're going to screw them over because of a non-active player that doesn't fill their roster. That's bad. That's really bad, and it kind of like puts a damper on everything. Conservative players, in my opinion, they're fine. It's just like you say, they're just going to be these middle of the road people, and they're just basically going to just sit there and between 4th and 8th place forever, because if you're going into a season and your roster looks exactly the same at the beginning and at the end, you didn't do a good job as a manager. That's my opinion. You cannot do that. So
I agree with that.
And whether it's trade, whether it's waiver, you have to be active.
I think 4th is kind of high there because I know we have in our league, our league that we have
Give the
together.
benefit of the doubt.
The guy that I'm thinking of, and I'm sure you guys all know as well. Yeah, he's finished 8th to 12th in every season since we started this league, and that's because he doesn't trade. That's because they don't move any pieces. They just take whatever's there. They redraft with their same stock. You had to trade big pieces to get first round picks to rebuild your entire team.
Of course.
If your team isn't winning already right now, what's the thing you got to think of? You got to rebuild. You got to change something. You got to move something.
You got to strike when the iron's hot. Yep,
right?
absolutely.
I did that this year. I'm rebuilding. I traded everything. I traded the house, and I'm restocking on some younger players, trying to rebuild and start fresh because it wasn't working. But if you're just stagnant, the same thing over and over again, you're not going to win. So,
and you're going to go backwards. You're going to continue to go backwards, right?
Yeah. But yeah, that's I think the majority of what everyone sees in these leagues. That's what you're going to look at. A few pet peeves of mine in fantasy. I just wanted to go through some things, and I'd be happy to hear some of yours as well, guys. But I think we should no longer have the waiver wire priority. I think it should from now on be fab dollars. I think that's just a way better system out there for a lot of things across the board. And you can add it to all leagues now that are out there. What else is there that we have? I do believe there should be an IR spot, at least one in football, especially with all the injuries we have. Some leagues maybe even more. That's something I'm noticing some leagues they don't want to do or whatnot. What else was there?
Especially in keeper leagues, you want to. If you lose a guy to the season, you don't want to drop a big name player. You should be able to keep guys on IR for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my biggest pet peeve, and this is, I think I've been hurt on this the most, as because I'm that trader style player. I don't think a trade should ever be vetoed, no matter what, unless you can find collusion between the two players that are making the trade. But I don't think a trade should be vetoed. It's on their part. They're paying the same money. They have their team. They have their reasons. As long as they can come to why those reasons are there, and you can ask them as a commissioner or whatnot. But I don't think a trade should ever be vetoed. Do you guys feel the same way on that with me?
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Right, and I notice a lot of leagues, and I've had it, and I'm in one where I'm pretty sure my trades have been vetoed. What is it, Chris? Frank? 3-4 times I've had trades vetoed?
It's up there. I don't know how you're still in the league, buddy. I'd be gone. All the bullshit you put up.
If it
with.
wasn't with my closest friends, and that's even worse, me saying that, by the way, I probably wouldn't. But yeah, I've had a few of them where it's basically they've told me, no, the trade's not fair, without saying that it's collusion at the same time. Unfortunate it is with the same person that I've traded with.
I think that maybe is you're being I don't know this, I'm not in this league, but maybe you're being a little bit of an opportunist, right? Like, so maybe you're taking advantage of the person that doesn't have the depth of knowledge, and I think they're trying to protect the league. I don't know. I'm not there, but I don't know who it is or whatever. But I could see how some trades can be unfair, especially if there's somebody that doesn't know the value of their players. But if they're okay with it, then they're okay with it, right?
It goes back to that saying you said, Sam, where you can ask 15 different people and you'll get 15 different interpretations of that trade.
Yep.
And
100%.
so if you open it up to everybody at that point where, should a trade be vetoed or not, or letting people vote, if half the league doesn't like me for certain things, such as making trades with everybody and them thinking that they lose to me already, am I ever going to get a trade through?
No.
Right.
And it's also if you're playing with a bunch of conservative managers too, right? Like, so if you're playing with people in that league that are conservative to begin with, they're obviously not going to like trades because they don't trade, So it's really kind of a perception thing too.
Yeah. So those are, I think, the biggest things I can think of, pet peeve wise. That I hope you guys can fix for your leagues and going forward. But
Yeah, I agree with all those. I mean, just to touch on the waivers, I'm a big fan of the daily fab where you have to put in a bid every day. And what that kind of curbs is the guy that's next to his phone on Twitter or whatever. He gets the news first and he's able to jump to the free agency at the time and just pick the guy up right away. Whereas if it's daily fab, everybody gets a fair shot at the player and it just goes to the highest bidder, right? So, and with that, trading fab dollars kind of becomes an opportunity to attach to trades to kind of sweeten the pot and stuff like that with owners that don't necessarily have a lot of trade dollars. Like you said, continual is kind of archaic, and I'm not a big fan of it. And I'm not a big fan of standard scoring either. I'm a big proponent to 0.5 PPR, and I love the tight end premium. I think it brings the position up a bit, evens it out, because in most leagues, the tight end's kind of scoring what kickers are, and it devalues the position a bit. So anything to bring up those key positions in your league is the kind of leagues that I'm looking forward to joining.
Yeah, no, well said. But yeah, that's a little bit about us, a little bit about the leagues we're in, a little bit about our style. So now you can see that. By all means, reach out to us on our Instagram accounts or our Twitters, and if you have any questions, please let us know. We'll be happy to help you guys and try to guide you guys with anything that we can, as we have been so far. So, but that's our show for today. Thank you guys.
I got one more thing. Hold on.
Sorry.
Just before we end, there's one thing. If you're in a league with James, just know if he's calling you about a trade, don't pick up, because the guy has a way with his words to just get in your head and make it sound like he's giving you the best deal of the year. So
you are winning.
Keep that in mind.
For you.
Yeah, just keep that in mind.
I'm calling you to help you.
No.
That's
If
right.
he's calling,
It's
it's because he knows he wants that guy and he has a chance at gold. So just keep it in mind, just a heads up.
I've made a lot of trades with James, but I've never taken the first deal. It's always the third or fourth or fifth. We go back and forth, and then we'll finally work on something.
The best though, Frank, is that third or fourth deal is actually where I want to be. The first or second, I know you don't want to be, so I know the third or fourth is where I want to be. It's okay. That's the trick.
Yeah. He starts pretty wild at first.
You got to start somewhere. You know what? We could do a whole episode on how to trade. I could teach you guys, but that's another one. You're in too many leagues with me, so I don't know if I want to go there yet.
I think this episode might hurt us.
Thank you again.
Now.
That's our show for tonight, guys. Like I said, you can follow us on Instagram at the Fantasy Football War Room. You can check us out on YouTube. You can check us out on Twitter. Our next episode will drop next week. Thank you again, and have yourselves a good night.
Ciao.